Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sports Talk with Tonsoni. I'm your host, Bryan Tonsoni. College basketball season starts in just 1 week. This episode will be the third episode in a four-part series where Bryan Mauro of Busting Brackets and myself and a guest each week will preview every conference in the country. This episode will focus on the conferences from the southern part of the country, and our guest tonight is Jerran Anderson, who we welcome in. Jerran, share with our listeners a little bit about yourself and where they can find your work.
How you doing? I'm Jerran Anderson. I go by Jay. I am currently a blog writer on Busting Brackets with Bryan Mauro as well. I've been on there for about 4 or 5 months now, and blog write on hoopshabit.com, which is an NBA website. For the Sixers in the other that, and my basketball background is I was a manager with the Virginia Tech basketball team for 4 years, and just kind of kept up with basketball on Twitter. You can find me at Here Go Jay Again. I also do some scouting and videography on the high school level as well. So I try to touch all the levels of basketball and doing what I do. And now I'm trying to, I guess, enter the realm of podcasting as well. So thanks for having me on tonight.
Well, Jay, we're glad to have you on. And both of my sons are college basketball managers. My oldest spent 3 years at Indiana University, and my younger son is in his third year, junior year at Indiana State. I have a huge appreciation for what
Nice.
college basketball managers do for their various programs. And so we're just glad to meet you and have you. Bryan, how are you doing tonight? I know that you've had a
It's
busy day. Glad to have
it's
you.
been, it's been an interesting couple of hours to say the least, but I'm doing all right. So there's nobody likes to have anybody sick in their family, and that's kind of what's going on with me right now. But we'll be all right. So,
well, maybe we spend a 45 minutes to an hour here just talking basketball and take you away from that, and hope your family gets better, feeling better, and quickly on from our behalf. So. We have 9 conferences to cover. A lot of them are smaller one-bid conferences. As we've mentioned in the previous shows, these one-bid conferences, the winners of their season-ending conference tournament goes to the tournament, and the regular season champion will go to the NIT if they are not the winner. But we like to share with our listeners some of the best teams and some upset specials and maybe some players to watch. But we're going to run through those smaller conferences somewhat quickly because we want to spend a lot of time on the SEC. So we're going to start off with the Southwestern Athletic Conference known as the SWAC. We'll start with you, Bryan. Who's your favorite?
So I just wrote, actually, on Busting Brackets. It got published on Saturday. I just wrote my SWAC preview. Jay and I kind of took turns and cast lots for who was going to have the SWAC and who was going to have the MEAC. I got the SWAC. And the reason I say that is because, so for those of you that don't know anything about the SWAC, because they're not very well known, they're not on TV, they are a conference made up of predominantly historically black colleges. They hemorrhage money, essentially. Their athletic departments are in debt. So the games that they play out of conference are games against the Kentuckys, Indiana's, Notre Dame's, Dukes of the world, where they're going to get pasted by 80, but they're also going to get paid. And so some of these teams, at least in my reading of them, a couple of them have some pretty good talent, but they're never going to be able to show that talent because they just get pasted by literally everyone because they have no other choice but to play those teams because they have to be able to have an athletic department. With that being said, the SWAC is also the one of the conferences in the country that has literally probably 3 of the worst teams in college basketball in it. Alabama A&M, who's probably going to finish last in that conference, I think they were 0-28 before they finally won a game last year, and they won 3 games in their conference tournament. Another thing about the SWAC is that a lot of times, a lot of these teams in the SWAC have a hard time meeting their graduation rates for really a myriad of reasons. But a lot of the students that go there, and I'm not going to speculate here because I don't really know, but from what I've read, a lot of the students that go there come from, single-parent families, so have to either leave college or get jobs and can never graduate. Just kind of, they have a lot of hardships and things like that. So a lot of them aren't able to meet their graduation rates at schools, which then puts them behind the 8 ball for NCAA competition. For example, Grambling last year won that conference outright, pretty handily actually in the regular season, but was not able to compete in any postseason tournament of any kind. So they could not go to the NIT and they could not go to the NCAAs. And I'm also fairly certain that this conference, the SWAC, does not receive an automatic bid to the NIT. I don't know if that's actually accurate or not, but I don't believe they do. Anyways, with that being said, my favorite to win this conference is Arkansas Pine Bluff. They have the best player in the conference, reigning SWAC Player of the Year, Martavius McKnight. The other team there's 2 teams that could potentially come up and get them. One of them is Southern. Actually, there's 3 teams that come up and get them. Southern, just because Southern has a lot of history in this conference already. They're usually one of the perennial powers in the league. They did 2 years ago. Their coach left to become their athletic director. Now they've hired one of the best coaches to coach in the SWAC, Sean Woods, who did coach Mississippi Valley State to 17-1, their last tournament appearance. You also have Grambling, who has their whole roster back from last year and is eligible to compete in postseason play this year. And they also have one of the best players in the league in Ivy Smith. And then another team who's going to take people by surprise, Prairie View A&M. They've made the tournament one time. They probably have Gary Blackston, who is the second best player in the league and legitimate NBA talent that he possesses. But Martavius McKnight at Arkansas Pine Bluff, they have the best roster, and he's the best player in the league. So they're my favorite. But again, that's all relative because this league at the top is pretty bunched together with about 5 or 6 teams that could potentially win it. And at the bottom, the bottom 3 are really, really bad. So,
Jay, your thoughts on the SWAC? Texas Southern has had their way the last few years, playing really tough non-schedule and then competing in the and winning the tournament and representing this league. Who do you see coming out of the SWAC this season?
I actually picked Grambling State just because of what they accomplished last year. I mean, they won their first SWAC regular season title since 1989. Won 11 straight games at one point last year, and that's something that's in these instances where this is like you're not really gonna like Bryan was saying, you're not really gonna go on a win streak because talent around. So I mean, although like he was saying, Prairie View A&M and Arkansas Pine Bluff were my other 3 teams that could contend for the title as well. Arkansas Pine Bluff with Martavius McKnight. Texas Southern, even though Mike Davis has gone to Detroit Mercy, they still got Johnny Jones from LSU.
And they also have a bunch of transfers
LSU
on that team too.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say next. Jalen Patterson and Jeremy Combs were 2 of the key names that to Southern. Gary Blackston, their junior college transfer from last year. This is the conference where a lot of junior college transfers have brought some punch to the conference. Martavius McKnight was also a junior college transfer last year that transferred in. So that's kind of where I was at. I'm right there with Bryan, although I think Grambling State will come out of it.
Texas Southern's an interesting story because
it is.
Indiana fans know, Mike Davis, who is the old Texas Southern's old coach, he built that roster up and kind of built a little powerhouse there by basically giving kids who either left their old schools or got kicked off their old school's team a second chance by going to Texas Southern. And most of them were actually pretty good players. So.
Oh yeah. And then, more NCAAs in the past 5 seasons for Texas Southern. So you never know.
No, and a tournament's always something special too with the winner take all. You never know what's going to happen. Let's move on to the Atlantic Sun Conference, where there seems to be a lot of offense in this league. At least last year, Lipscomb was known for a high-powered offense. They made the NCAA tournament last year. Jerran, who do you think is poised to make another trip to the NCAA out of the Atlantic Sun?
Even though the Atlantic Sun is the home of Dunk City in Florida, for the Gulf Coast, I picked the Lipscomb Bisons, simply because they return all 5 starters. They've got Player of the Year, Garrison Matthews back. He shot 38.1% for 3-point range. Then they've got Rob Marbury on the inside. He averaged 15.9 points, 5.8 rebounds last year. I mean, other than Lipscomb, it's hard to pick Florida Gulf Coast just because they lose their best 3 players from last year, and Brandon Goodwin, Zach Johnson, Christian Terrell. Jacksonville, they've got freshman of the year from last year, J.D. Notae. Just in terms of the talent that everybody else is returning, it's hard to pick Florida Gulf Coast here. And I mean, I like Lipscomb in how they played last year. They're like you said, they're high-powered offense, and I mean, they're coming off back-to-back 20-win seasons. So if there ever was a Cinderella team, I'd point at Lipscomb for now.
These are the shows that I like to see when it comes to selecting winners in the bracket. I know at Delphi Bracketology we actually select the bracket and we just take whoever wins this conference. But now with the 16 seed beating the number 1 seed, there's going to be a lot of people looking at these conferences for the next big upset, right? And I believe this is a conference that could pull one of those 16-1, 15-2, 14-3 type upsets, depending on where they're seated. Bryan,
well, they've done it before, obviously with Dunk City that year when they made the Sweet 16. Also, one quick thing, I know this, you can edit this out, I hope. My screen still says off air. Are we off air? Or are we recording?
It says live.
Okay, mine usually says live. Sorry, I thought we could edit that out.
Mine says off air too. All right.
And if we're off air, I have a backup recording going as well.
Oh, so. Okay, sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to do that there. But anyways, back to the Atlantic Sun. That's super unprofessional of me, but I apologize. Back to the Atlantic Sun. Yeah, Lipscomb. I like Dunk City. They're one of the most exciting teams in the country to watch. Yeah. They're called Dunk City for a reason. They don't really do much other than the way of basically have earth shaking dunks. But Lipscomb with Garrison Matthews and Jacksonville are probably the 2 teams in this conference. But they're another team too, Bryan, who, and Jay, I'm sure will agree with this. They're another team too, like with all the rest of the small conferences, the bottom tier of this league is not great at all. Yep. I mean, you have Stetson, who's bad. You have a brand new team, North Alabama, who's going to be overmatched most of the time they play. But but with that being said, Lipscomb and even Kennesaw State, it's not great. But the USC Upstate's not in this conference anymore, I don't believe, or are they now?
Yeah, they got rid of them. They went to the Big South. But I mean, I think it helps the conference.
Yeah, but with Garrison Matthews and what you said, Bryan, he definitely can help this team win a game in the tournament, especially if they pull a Dunk City and catch a team napping. They'll get somebody, because Garrison Matthews is a guy that can light it up, man. Yeah. He's not the best shooter of who we're going to talk about tonight, because that guy resides in the Southern Conference, but he's pretty close. So
I'd agree. I think I know who you're talking about from Wofford.
Wofford. Yeah, we'll talk about him here in a second. That dude's impressive. So
I did check on my phone, and we are coming out live.
Okay.
Videos.
Perfect. Okay, I was just making sure. Sorry, that was just weird. I apologize.
All right. Big South Conference, another one-bid conference. Team last year sent Radford to the NCAA. Bryan, Mauro, Radford going back, or is there another team to watch this year?
You know, I would love to pick Radford, and I did pick Radford actually to win the league. But a team that I think that everybody needs to kind of keep an eye on and should remain kind of keeping that eye on is Campbell, because they have a player named Chris Clemens. And Bryan, you'll appreciate this. He, exactly like Mike Dom, does not need many points for 3,000 in his career. And Jay, I'm going to actually amend my previous statement. Chris Clemens may be the best shooter of everybody we're talking about. That dude, he
Campbell.
is an elite scorer. And he's
Right.
he's not a tall guy. He's just, I don't know how in the world that I do know he's not very big. He's a little dude, but I don't know how in the world he escaped Campbell or escaped everyone else but Campbell. But
Right.
he can make it rain, and he is going to – it's his last year. Campbell has a decent roster around him. He can lead them to some victories. And Campbell doesn't have a lot of basketball tradition. But Radford still has Carlick Jones. They still have Ed Polite. They're still a team to beat in that league. And it's going to be, I think, between them and Campbell. And probably a team that everyone's kind of sleeping on that forgets to join the Big South is Hampton. Who has always had a really good kind of – they've always been a power in the MEAC. And they bring their whole team back from the MEAC regular season champs last year. So the Big South's kind of a three-headed race. But again, like with every other conference, the bottom tier with Longwood and Presbyterian is bad. So,
Jay, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, you can't count. You can't count Mike Jones out. I like what he's done at Radford. My sister actually, she's a women's basketball coach. She started her career at Radford, so I'm pretty good terms with the Radford program. So it's good to see Mike Jones. Won an automatic bid to the tournament. They're a rather young team. Two of the three returners are underclassmen. And Carlick Jones, and I think it was Donald Hicks was the other one. But yeah, like Bryan said too, the addition of Hampton should definitely add some interesting twist to this conference. Buck Joyner and Hampton, they're another program I've been around and I've seen with the Boo being friends with Boo Williams. Jermaine Mauro is another player to look out for in the Big South this year. He's a guard on the Hamptons team. He's pretty good and pretty good leader. He'll be a senior this year. So
Jermaine Mauro can get after it, man. That dude's pretty good.
Yeah,
so
on both ends. So he can get to the free throw
good.
line. So
That's
it's good for Hampton too, being in a conference that actually is going to get a little bit of notoriety. The Big South has a potential to get two teams in. They can, and that's good for Hampton because now they're not in the shadow of the MEAC anymore.
Yeah, the MEAC was mad they left.
Yes, they were,
and they should be.
This is what is good about college basketball. Listen to you guys talk about these players that a lot of us may not know because the mainstream television stations show your big Power 5, Power 6 games all the time. And I've said it for a long time, there is quality basketball throughout the NCAA. It doesn't have to be or the Big Ten. But there are some quality players. We've talked about Mike Dom, and you're talking about players scoring 3,000 points at the Division I level. These are players that hopefully our listeners will follow and check up on, and when they do pop into a television game to check out these players. This is good basketball in these leagues. And so we're moving somewhat quickly today. We're now at the Colonial Athletic Association. Jay, we'll start with you. College of Charleston's been one of the better teams in the past few years. Do they hang on again this year? Are they the clear-cut favorite? Or is there someone else to watch in the Colonial?
I mean, the College of Charleston, they won a conference tournament last year. They made their first NCAA tournament since 1999. They're entering year 4. They're entering year 4 under Earl Grant. They went 26-8 last year. Experience will be on their side, but I think this conference will go to Northeastern as far as Vasatika. I hope I'm saying that right. It has another good year. The interesting addition for Northeastern is the addition of Jordan Rowland from George Washington. He was a 41.7% shooter, 3-point shooter with George Washington. So all in all, I think it's between Northeastern and College of Charleston in this conference. Again, it's another one of those conferences that it does at the bottom. It doesn't have too much talent, but yeah, I gotta go with Northeastern here.
Bryan, your thoughts here in the Colonial?
I think it's going to be a 2-team race between College of Charleston and Northeastern. And just for the sake of argument, I'm going to pick College of Charleston because they have Jarrell Brantley and tons of experience. Yeah, Jarrell Brantley is the front runner probably for Player of the Year. He's really, really good. He is, and keep in mind, for everybody that remembers this, because maybe Jay and I are the only ones that remember this because our minds are on basketball pretty much constantly. But College of Charleston took, I believe it was Auburn last year in the tournament. They took them pretty much. Auburn had to make a last-second shot to beat College of Charleston. And they lost one of those players, Joe Shaley. They won by 4, yeah, okay. But it was close, and it was never like a College of Charleston made a run. It was pretty much, a 1 or 2 possession game the whole game. Jarrell Brantley was on that team. Their point guard Grant Riller also, he actually is the returning leading scorer. He's their best player, but Jarrell Brantley gets the pub. They have another player. They had another player last year named Joe Shaley. He's actually gone. And as Jay said, Vasa Pusika from Northeastern. He's Northeastern is the trendy pick here, as they should be. They have a really good team, and Northeastern and College of Charleston really as well will go out and play teams. So this could be a 2-bid league. It probably won't be, but it has the potential to be. And if you guys remember, it was funny. Kevin Keats, who now coaches at NC State, used to be the coach at UNC Wilmington here, and he had a powerhouse.
UNC Wilmington.
Yeah, he had a powerhouse in that league. And UNC Wilmington they took teams to the wire as well. They took Duke to the wire one year. So, I mean, this league has good basketball in it just because it's the Colonial's got a good basketball. So
I think William and Mary would be one team that will challenge too. I just think in terms of scoring punch and experience, it's hard to pick against Northeastern and College of Charleston.
Mm-hmm. William and Mary's the feel-good story is they've never made the tournament ever. So
who knows? Go Tribe.
Yeah.
And again, I will challenge our listeners to check out the conference standings throughout the season, especially when the conference season starts December, early January. See how some of these teams playing out. We're moving on now to the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, the MEAC. Jerran, your favorite here. This looks like the winner is going to be a play-in game, 15 seed or at least a 16 seed. And again, you can write off these conferences as lower conferences, but now that a 16 seed has won, I think they're worthy of taking a look at. So who do you have, Jay, in this Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference?
I really like Lavelle Moulton in the North Carolina Central Hawks and Eagles in this conference, the MEAC. It's like we were saying earlier about the SWAC. This is a similar conference where a lot of the players is predominantly HBCUs, and there's talent, but in terms of who they play, their records don't really show the level of how good they are. In this conference, you've got North Carolina Central that can win it, Bethune-Cookman, Norfolk State, Savannah State. But again, I go with North Carolina Central because for some reason this tournament gets here. All of a sudden, they're good. I think they won, the last 2 of the last 3 the NCAA tournament. So to pick against Lavelle Moulton, he's a good coach in my book. So,
Go ahead, Bryan.
So the MEAC, as in case anyone else remembers, has two of the more famous upsets in NCAA basketball tournament history. Hampton beat Iowa State as a 15 seed, and Norfolk State also beat Frank Haith in Missouri, the same year that Duke lost to Lehigh. Actually, on back-to-back days that happened. So they have two of the bigger upsets in the entire NCAA tournament history. North Carolina Central, not led by Lavelle Moulton, but North Carolina Central at one point also beat North Carolina in a regular season game. They play every year. So this conference has had a little bit of history. They've been down for the last couple of years. But I would say North Carolina Central and Bethune-Cookman on paper have the best rosters. Now, one thing to watch in this conference is there's a team in Savannah State who was the fastest paced team in the country last year. They were also one of the worst defensive efficiency teams in the country last year. They couldn't stop anybody, but they got their offensive motto is to run up the floor and hoist a three as fast as humanly possible. And they're really fun to watch, but they also last year in a game against Michigan State, they played to a 3-point game at half. They were losing. And then Savannah State went in there, patented chuck a three every time we get down the floor offense and didn't score, I don't think, for the final 18 minutes of the game and got their doors blown off. But they were fun to watch. And it's kind of infuriating if you are a basketball purist. Like, why are you running that offense? But that's the way they play. That's what they
do, right?
That's what they do. They get up and down the floor. They play no defense at all, and they are the fastest paced team in the country.
Led the MEAC in scoring at 86.1 points.
Yeah, and when I say fastest pace, 86.1, that's
pretty good in college basketball.
Yeah, that's really good in college basketball, especially for a team from the MEAC. Of course, and this team took, I think, what was it, like 45 to 53s a game or something like that. It was something unbelievable.
Good gosh.
But it's also their last year in Division I as well, because they did not qualify again, so they're going down a level. But they're really fun to watch, so give them a chance. But I would say North Carolina Central, Lavelle Moulton, not a guy to take lightly when it comes to tournament time. He's just like Tim Cluess, and now he has one less power to compete with.
With Hampton.
In Hampton, so I think that Lavelle Moulton, with the way he has his team positioned, he's probably going to make a pretty good run here for a while in this conference. It might be his to lose for a long time. So
you're listening to Sports Talk with Tonsoni. I'm Bryan Tonsoni. Joining me is Bryan Mauro and Jerran Anderson. We're talking a little Southern basketball. We have 4 conferences left, 3 until we get to the SEC. So let's move on to the Sun Belt Conference. And Bryan,
the Fun Belt.
Oh yeah,
the Fun Belt.
Yours.
This conference, and it's called the Fun Belt for a reason, because this conference, the regular season and tournament, is flat madness every single year. So there's 2 Georgia teams. There's Georgia State, Georgia Southern. Both of them are probably the early favorites. Georgia State has the best player in the conference in DeMarcus Simons. Kid can go get him. Then I would put Louisiana in there. They do have a Missouri transfer who's really good. They have also built their team through transfers. And another team that I'm actually close with because I do know their coach, I've interviewed him a couple times, done a couple articles about his school, is Troy. I do think that they are a top-tier team in this league. They have an outside chance of making the tournament because they have 2 really good players. They have Alex Hicks, who's a wing, and then they have Jordan Vanardo, who is their he's the other wing, but he plays more of a hybrid 3-4. Good shooter, really good rebounder, rim protector, a little undersized for the position that he plays, but he's a really good player. I did an article about him actually on Busting Brackets. Nice kid, plays for Troy. Troy's going to have should have a good year. But this conference has a legitimate 4 teams that you could say could make a run at the title for regular season, And then who knows what's going to happen in the tournament, because their tournament is crazy every year. Last year, Louisiana ran through the tournament or ran through the regular season basically unscathed. I think they lost maybe 2 games the entire regular season in the regular season.
Yeah, 16-2, yeah.
Yeah, and then they go to the tournament and get beat the first round. So, I mean, so it's just – and then Georgia State, who I think was the 6th seed last year, they made the tournament. They made the NCAA tournament last year because they were just – it's the Fun Belt, man. It never fails. So
Jay, we've talked on previous podcasts that sometimes these tournaments, these one-bid leagues, comes down to who's hot, and specifically if you have a coach who is really good in back-to-back games, that can take a conference with 5 or 6 close-knit teams, and it could be the coaching and the preparation that gets a team through. What do you think of the Fun Belt from your perspective?
It's like he said. I think it'll be a 4-team race. Well, actually, I think it'll be. He said 3-team. I said 4-team, just because I think it'll be between Georgia State, Louisiana, Georgia Southern, and Louisiana Monroe was the other team I thought would be up there. Ron Hunter, he's been to 2 tournaments in the past 4 years.
He beat
Sun
Baylor.
Belt player. Yep, and then Sun Belt Player of the Year, DeMarcus Simons is back for them. He can really fill up. He can do more than just score. And then you've got Louisiana's right behind them, even though they've lost some players to graduation. But I mean, they've 7 of the top 10 players returned. So.
And they still have Jakeem and Gant, so that they're good.
Yeah.
They'll be all right.
Yeah, 2.3 blocks per game, Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, it's the Fun Belt for a reason, but yeah, like you said, the tournament, anything can happen.
And we're moving on to even another conference here in the South, the Southern Conference. Had a couple quality teams last year in UNC Greensboro and East Tennessee State in the regular season. 3 conference losses for UNC Greensboro, 4 for East State. UNC Greensboro won the bid and represented the league in the tournament. Jay, who do you see as the top contenders this year?
I think it'll be between Wofford and UNC Greensboro. Wofford, they've as we mentioned earlier, they've got their Southern Conference Player of the Year, Fletcher McGee, back. He can really fill it up. And then with UNCG, they went 15-3 last year in the conference. Then they earned their first bid since 2001. It should be interesting to see too how, I guess, Eastern Tennessee responds. They lose all 5 of their starters after going 14-4 last year. So I think it boils down to Wofford and UNCG here. So
didn't Wofford just it reported out beat someone in a secret scrimmage?
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but they crushed somebody.
Let me look at it. Scrimmages.
It was another team that we were talking from one of the conferences we were talking about. Actually, no, that was the Ohio Valley. Never mind. I'm gonna say Jacksonville State from the Ohio Valley just blasted. Man, who did Jacksonville State crush the other night?
Let me see.
They beat them by like 40.
I thought it was. I don't want to say. Oh, was it Texas A&M? No, Alabama.
Yeah, Jacksonville State beat Alabama by like 30 points in their secret scrimmage. Which it's a secret scrimmage. Don't put too much stock into it, but that one was kind of eye-opening to me, just a little bit. So, anyways, we'll get to that here in a second.
Bryan, any thoughts on the Southern Conference?
I do. So, Wofford, East Tennessee State, and UNC Greensboro. Those are probably the 3 favorites, but as I'm sure Jay will attest to, you couldn't have 3 teams that played 3 different styles of basketball, completely. So UNC Greensboro is a team that tries to keep you low scoring and grind you out, and they have the players to do so. They did it last year in the tournament, almost won a game. I believe they might have been the team that lost on the last second shot. They were. I don't remember Gonzaga, I believe, is who they played, and almost beat them. So they can play. And then you have Wofford, who has Fletcher McGee, who is the returning player of the year, who likes to get up and down the floor and score. Wofford also is famous for beating North Carolina 2 years ago. Fletcher McGee was on that team. And then you have East Tennessee State, who likes to play basically their own version of Dunk City, and that's how Steve Forbes likes to play defense and dunking the ball. All 5 of the guys they had last year were extremely athletic and like to play above the rim. It remains to be seen what happens to them, as Jay said, this year. I just don't know if they'll have it. But I still had UNC Greensboro here. They have their core back from the tournament team last year. They have the experience. But Wofford's going to be really tough to beat. And just because UNC Greensboro, the way they play, the bruising, grind you out style that they play is really hard to prepare for and really hard to beat if you're not making shots. So
that sounds
agreed.
We're moving on now to the Conference USA. Here's a conference that could possibly get more than one bid if things go well. Middle Tennessee, Old Dominion, Western Kentucky. Last year led the league. Bryan, who do you think looks to be on top of Conference USA this season?
So this is another conference that has just ridiculous amounts of things happen in their tournament every year. But I do want to – this one I'm going to spend just a little bit more time on because this is going to be a really fun conference to follow this year. So you have Marshall, who made the tournament last year. Excuse me. Marshall made the tournament last year, won a game they probably had no business winning, but John Elmore, their guard, is in range once he walks in the gym, and that's not a joke. I mean, that dude will hoist shots from wherever he is at on the floor and makes a lot of them. Western Kentucky, led by Rick Stansberry, has a bunch of NBA players on their roster, and they should run away with this league, but they're probably not going to.
Just because that's how it goes.
They're not going to, and it is still a Rick Stansberry led team, so something ultimately is going to happen. They do have another kid named Charles Bassey, who is a legit lottery pick on their team. And the Western Kentucky is going to be really, really good. And then you also have, so I am really into. I don't think Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee is going to be way down. They lost Kermit Davis. They lost a whole lot of players. A lot of them either got expelled from school or left the team because Kermit's gone. So when I say way down, they won't be their normal dominant self. That might be Western Kentucky this year. Like, I legitimately think Western Kentucky is going to beat a couple of big D1 schools. The third one I have is North Texas. Excuse me, I apologize. It's going to be North Texas. They have 2 of the best, most unheralded guards probably in the country, in Roosevelt Smart and Ryan Woolridge. Woolridge is their point guard. The guy led the league and led the NCAA in minutes last year. He averaged 38.2 minutes a game last year, which basically means he was off the floor for about a minute and a half every game. And Roosevelt Smart, and they played at Nebraska last year, and I watched them play, and they didn't start off very well, but they played well in the second half. Roosevelt Smart did not play well that game at all, but Ryan Woolridge did, and I was extremely impressed. Roosevelt Smart is one of the best, probably, scorers in mid-major basketball. He can light up the scoreboard. Then you have a team, UTSA, who is another school that likes to play like Wofford and likes to play like Savannah State and just go and get out there and have as many possessions as they possibly can to try to outscore you. And they have a little point guard.
Isn't their mascot the Roadrunners?
The Roadrunners, yeah, and they play exactly like that. And they have a little guy who's their point guard named Javon Jackson, a little dude with an afro. Who he's another one who once he steps in the gym and the lights come on, dude's in range. I watched him play last year against Nebraska in a game, and the final score of this game against Nebraska was 108-98. And Nebraska,
it was an NBA game.
It was an NBA game, and Javon Jackson was just running across half court and hoisting up threes and burying them. And he's about 5'6". Yeah, he's good. Really good. He's 5'6", really, really quick.
18.4 points per game.
Yeah, really quick guard. So there's him, and then obviously there's Old Faithful in the Conference USA, and there is Old Faithful. When I say that, is Old Dominion, because every single year they have a team that is a force to be reckoned with every year, and they're another team, just like we said with UNC Greensboro. They never had to do anything flashy. They just grind you out and win games because they grind you out and they have the stronger team, and they don't foul you. And, you know, they put the ball in the basket. They rebound well. They just do all the fundamental things you would like. But this league is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And the Marshall, in case nobody knows, Marshall and Western Kentucky have a really big rivalry, and they don't like each other at all. And those two teams are the two best teams in the league by far. So
that sounds fun.
Do you think this is possibly a multi-bid league?
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, the big conferences get a lot of bids, but with the new system coming in, there's some hope that some of these conferences that are really competitive. But I can maybe foresee that Western Kentucky does beat some top-level teams and runs out and has a good season. And then if they maybe don't win their conference, they might be in place for an at-large bid.
They just have to avoid doing what Middle Tennessee did last year. Middle Tennessee would have got in, except the teams they lost to in the tournament last year, and they're in their own conference tournament, killed them.
Yeah, busted the bubble.
So Jerran, you possibly see this as a multi-bid league?
Yes, sir. Western Kentucky's got Washington on the road on their schedule. They can possibly face West Virginia. They play Arkansas on the road. They've got Wisconsin at home.
A game they should have won last year, by the way.
They've got games on their schedule that if they can win them out and do what they're supposed to do, even if they stumble in the conference tournament, which will probably happen, they should be able to get into the tournament simply because they've got Charles Bassey on the roster. They've got another kid you want to keep an eye on is Delano Banton. He's a combo guard who can play the point or the off the ball. So
and Tavion Hollingsworth too. Don't forget about him.
Tavion Hollingsworth.
He's also from he's trapped in the wrong decade of basketball too. If you watch this kid play, big old afro. He's got a headband, wears knee-high socks, and like old-school Converse shoes. He's awesome.
Right. Yeah. I forgot he broke their freshman scoring record last year. He averaged 13.3 points last year. So, I mean, the buzz is there for Western Kentucky to make a move, but I still think the Marshall, because I mean, you've got John Elmore, then you've got CJ. Both averaged over 20 points per game last year. Yeah, they can flow. Yeah, sorry, Dan D'Antoni.
Yeah, Dan D'Antoni. He's a character, man. That guy. It's just like his brothers.
Right. That's all I can say.
Yeah, he's just like his brothers. So.
Sports Talk with Tonsoni. We're talking Southern basketball. We are now at the Premier Conference in the South, the Southeastern Conference, which has been kind of reborn in the last few years and might be at its peak this year. Looking at multiple teams, 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe teams by the end of the year making the tournament. The SEC is probably at its best in the past 10 to 20 years at this time. So I'm going to start with Jay, with you saying I think we all kind of look at Kentucky as the cream of the crop here in the SEC. But if there was one team that you would pick to beat Kentucky in the regular season or the tournament, which one of these SEC teams do you think would give Kentucky the most chance to defeat them in the conference?
I would say Tennessee. I really like what Tennessee returns. I really like what Rick Barnes has done short time with this program. I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to see. Yeah, they did beat Kentucky last year, but they lost to them in the conference tournament championship. But in 2 meetings, Kentucky lost to them during the regular season last year. And that's kind of where I think Tennessee is a team that has Kentucky's numbers. So it's kind of up to Kentucky this year to beat Tennessee. But I mean, you got Grant Williams on Tennessee, reigning SEC Player of the Year. Admiral Schofield is probably one of the toughest post players in the conference. Yeah, and then you've got Auburn. Even once again, Bruce Pearl's found a way, as always, to have a top team. So I mean, this is the conference I think that. I mean, I like what John Calipari has done with this conference, and I say that because him bringing so many top recruits to Kentucky has made the rest of the conference recruit better and get better and be. That's what you like to see in college basketball. You like to see that competitiveness, and even though we know Kentucky is the cream of the crop, it's not. It hasn't been easy for them this past couple of seasons. Now, I will say they do have one of the more experienced squads this year that they've had in a while.
Which is crazy to talk about with Kentucky, by the way.
Yeah.
Because every year it's like, oh, well, they just got a whole bunch of new dudes.
Right. They got eight new freshmen. But I mean, this year, I mean, they've actually got post play. Because I feel like John Cal is always trying to stretch what he has. I feel like this year he doesn't have to stretch himself at all. Like this year, he should be comfortable if all goes well with what he has. You got Reed Travis, Quade Green, PJ Washington. I mean, you've got kids, I think, that really play both ends very well and can challenge. But again, they got to get through Tennessee.
Jay, you bring up a really good point about elevating a conference. And I do think you're right with Calipari elevating this conference, both recruiting-wise and as a coach in high school. I think that the SECs went out and tried to hire some really good coaches. You know, you could say what you want about Bruce Pearl. The guy can coach some basketball.
Oh, he can coach his ass off. Yep.
Oh, yeah, you know, I mean, just does a really good job on the sidelines. You have people up and down this conference from Drew at Vanderbilt that really can do some coaching and recruiting, and the whole conference has been elevated in order to compete with Kentucky. So Bryan, going back a little bit of talk about Kentucky, we mentioned that when they do have some veteran presence, that's generally when Kentucky has their better years and their deepest tournament runs. When they rely on 5 or 6 freshmen coming in all at one time, that's when they generally struggle to get as far as their fan base would want. This season, to me, looks like one of those deep-run Kentucky teams. Would you agree?
Yeah, I never bet against Calipari in the tournament. It just
nope.
every year, even those years when he's like an 8 or 9 seed, he still always finds a way to get those kids to play and win. He has a team built for the tournament. He has a team that is a nightmare to prepare for on short notice. So basically, on the tournament, you find out on a Sunday, and then you know who you're playing on Thursday. Kentucky's a really hard team to prepare for in that short amount of time. Now, Kentucky's going to get tested like they do every year early. Okay, the PJ Washington is a boss. The dude can play his behind off. He is going to probably be their leading scorer. Losing Wenyen Gabriel, I think that might hurt them a little bit. And Quade Green still has to show me a few things before I'm ready to jump on that train. But Reed Travis, he's a grad transfer from Stanford. He is a double-double machine, and he's going to make them a lot better. But to Jay's point, I believe, Jay, if I'm not mistaken, hasn't Tennessee beat them like 5 or 6 times in a row? Something like that? Because Rick Barnes got a raw deal at Texas and never should have been fired from there to begin with in the first place anyway. He is the same coach that recruited Kevin Durant. Go ahead.
They did him a favor.
Yeah, no, they really
did him a favor by firing.
They did. But what I'm saying is why he never should have got fired. I mean, he brought in Kevin Durant to play at Texas. Okay?
Right.
A kid from DC who could go anywhere. chose to go play a year at Texas. He
DJ
also
too.
DJ Augustine, TJ Ford, like all those kids were Rick Barnes guys, and then they fired him, and now he's going to Tennessee and doing the same thing. And with Rick Barnes, he plays a different style than a lot of other guys, which is kind of the theme, I think, of this podcast for me. He for some reason every year, Rick Barnes, other than Durant, has never ever recruited anybody with height because he likes to spread you out and have a bunch of guys who can shoot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Admiral Schofield's 6'8", but as Jay said, he's huge, and he is one of the best post players. But
he's 6'5".
Oh yeah, that is. He's 6'5", but he's just a beast underneath, and he, as I said, he has one of the shorter teams in the country. He wins a lot, and he's probably going to win again. They have, for my money, they have one of the best rosters in the league. And so when you say how many teams can they get in, they got 8 last year, I believe. Alabama to me is still an extreme wild card.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm not sold on Alabama without Colin Sexton this year.
Neither am I.
Me.
I mean, Herb Jones. I'm not either. Herb Jones is good. John Petty's pretty good, but man, they got. And this is an exhibition game, so I shouldn't make a lot of noise about it because teams win and lose all the time. But when you get pasted in an exhibition game by a team that you shouldn't even be on the same, like that shouldn't be on the court with you in Jacksonville State, that is concerning. And I don't mean like they got beat 75-68. They got pasted. They gave up almost 100 points.
It was 92-66.
Yeah, they got drilled. And it doesn't look like, I don't know. I'm not super sold on Alabama. I do, however, like Vanderbilt's roster and their freshmen and their coach. So we'll see if Vanderbilt can finally get back to where they were at before. But the SEC is going to be – and the team that just always every year seems to confuse me is Florida. Because I never know if they're ever going to have – if they're going to have a championship roster or if they're going to just kind of be a middling team. I don't know. They always confuse me. And I don't know how they're going to be this year, but the SEC is going to have good basketball.
I'm going to throw this to Jay. There's some teams that are being talked about moving up in the SEC that were not one of the 8 teams that made it last year. And I'm talking Mississippi State and LSU that are getting some love in the rankings, at least in the conference rankings or whatever else. Does Mississippi State and LSU move on to the top 6 in the SEC in your opinion, Jay?
I mean they can. I for LSU, I really like Tremont Waters. Just my thing with LSU is just, are you able to replace what you've lost? I mean, they've just lost. They lost Duop Wraith. They lost Brandon Sampson. They lost Aaron Epps. They lost Randy Omuasar. Like, it's just, in terms of newcomers, they've got a lot to replace. And then in terms of returning production, is it enough? Yeah.
I
love
LSU.
15.
Sorry. I love Mississippi State's roster. I watched them play last year in the NIT. Nebraska played them. They're good. They're a scrappy bunch. They got all their guys back. And they have a point guard on their team, Lamar Peters. Dude does not score a lot, but man, he's flashy. And he's pretty good. He's super quick, has really good moves, can basically pass through a pinhole or basically thread a needle with the ball. Guy's good. And they have 2 of the bigger, like Eric Holman, their guy underneath, a monster. So this could be, they could get back this year. Still need to see a little bit more from them, a little bit more consistency, because last year at points in time, they had a hard time putting the ball in the basket. And
especially from 3-point range.
Yeah. And Ben Howland, I still don't know how great of a coach Ben Howland actually is. Guy can recruit his behind off, but he's not I don't know if he's a great coach. So we'll see. But with Eric Peters and the Witherspoons back and Lamar Peters, they should have they are going to have a pretty stout roster. But like we were talking about before, is it good enough, though, to compete with Kentucky and Tennessee and Florida and all those schools? So
they shot 12 from 3-point range last year in the SEC. Mississippi State did.
They were dead last?
No,
not
12.
Dead last. 12. 12 or 14. Okay.
Yeah. 31.9%. That's kind of where
they're going to be hurt. I gather these 6 teams that you guys are talking about right now to be the top of the league: Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn, Mississippi State, Florida. That's 5.
LSU or Vanderbilt. They're kind of interchangeable to me, at least.
Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn. Yeah, Mississippi State, Florida as your top 5. Then you got LSU, Vanderbilt, 6, 7. You got room for one more. Is there another team? That's Texas A&M, who's been traditionally pretty good recently. They're falling off. They've lost some people, but sneak back into a tournament and momentum that they've had.
If I had to pick an ace team, it'd probably be Alabama. I think they have enough to get there. I just don't know how good they're actually going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that assessment. I think if there was an ace team, it'd be Alabama. But, I mean, they've got Tevin Mack that's got to adjust. They still got John Petty there, but,
and Herb Jones. But that team was so reliant last year on Colin Sexton.
Yeah,
he literally did. He did everything for that team last year.
Yeah.
And now that he's gone, and despite what your opinions on Colin Sexton may be and how he got to Alabama and why he went to Alabama and all that's null and void, because he was their best player. He was my favorite player to watch. Well, that was not on my favorite team. He was my favorite player on my not favorite team to watch last year because he was amazing. I mean, they almost beat Minnesota last year with 3 dudes. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
They had it was Dazon Ingram, Braxton Key, and him, and they almost beat Minnesota last year.
He dropped just taking one dribble over half court and just. And I
think he dropped like 50 in that game or something like that. But without him, it's going to be interesting to see what John or Herb Jones does with more playing time because he did not. Him and John Petty are going to be the ones that get the ball. And Avery Johnson Jr. is probably going to be their point guard. So we'll see.
So with your guys' 8, that leaves out South Carolina, who made a Final Four trip a couple years ago. Arkansas, who has a Gafford guy at the post.
Yeah, that's the team I probably should have picked was Arkansas, actually. They made it last year. I forgot about that.
Dante, what the name's – he just blew out his knee, unfortunately, for Missouri.
Jonte Porter? Yeah.
Jonte Porter.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big loss. And then you have bringing up the rear is Tom Crean led Georgia team and Ole Miss with the new coach coming in. Do you see South Carolina, Arkansas, Missouri, Texas A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss? Jay, do you see any of those making noise in the conference this year? SEC.
Between Arkansas and Ole Miss, I think they'll do a little bit. But in terms of offense, Arkansas doesn't have a player that averaged more than per game last year. That's kind of like a little worrying if you're especially an SEC team because it's mostly off. Like you're getting a lot of offense, you're getting a lot of top flight recruits. So I mean, I would say I would give it to pretty much Ole Miss doing something just because I like what Kermit Davis did at Middle Tennessee State. But I don't like how they did Andy Kennedy.
Yeah. Bryan, who's the team that's going to jump up into the top of the SEC?
So just on Missouri really quick, they lost Jonte Porter, which hurts them a lot. But they did get Mark Smith eligible, who's a transfer from Illinois. Now, the question is I don't know how good Mark Smith actually is former
Mm-hmm.
5-star recruit, former baseball player, looked really uncomfortable at Illinois. So I don't know how good he's going to be at Missouri in this year at least. So their depth hurts them. South Carolina to me does not. They do not look good at all. I don't know what happened. Well, actually, Sendarius Thornwell being gone did not help
Yeah,
them at all.
that's hurt
That
them since he's left. Yep.
Yeah, it's hurt them since he's left. Arkansas with Daniel Gafford, he could be a game changer, and they made the tournament last year. And Bryan, I don't know. You're an Indiana fan, so I'm going to leave this to you. I don't personally think that Tom Crean's going to have Georgia down for a long time, but I know there's a lot of Indiana fans that believe differently, just because they don't really like Crean. But I don't know how you feel about it. So,
we don't have long on the podcast for me to. Gentlemen, I'm glad he's in Athens, Georgia, not in Bloomington anymore. I will say that I think Coach Crean does know his basketball, and I think that he can coach the game. I think it's some of the other things that got him out of favor with people like myself here that were more off the court type things. But I do respect how hard the man works, and I believe in a school and a conference like that he will have Georgia near the top sooner than later. I do believe he's shown that at Marquette and Indiana that he can build. So despite my personal preferences, that I'm glad he's not coaching my Indiana Hoosiers. I do have some respect for the man, and I think that he'll probably do a good job. I'm not sure it'll be this year.
yeah, their rosters. They lost Deontay Mate, and that's going to hurt them a lot. Their roster's not very good. So Mark Fox could coach a little bit. He just couldn't recruit very well. So
he's got bodies though.
yeah, but so I mean, most teams have bodies. It matters if those guys can play or not. Does he have SEC bodies? Is the question.
Right. That'll be what'll be interesting.
Just to keep in mind as well, Tom Crean had Ashton Hagans, who is now at Kentucky. Tom Crean had him committed to Georgia, and then Hagans decommitted and went to Kentucky. So that is going to hurt Crean a lot. If he would have had him, he might have been all right.
So let's wrap up.
I mean,
go ahead, Jay.
No, I mean they still managed to get the Lithuanian guard, Ignis.
Yeah.
Ignis Sargent.
Ignis, yeah, that's true.
So I mean, it might not hurt too bad, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I think we've kind of discussed the SEC is pretty solid from the top to the bottom. When we're talking about, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Missouri, some of these teams that might be in the bottom half having chances in games. There's not really a bad bottom in the SEC. So I do think that what everyone's been saying about the SEC is true. This is a league that is, if it's not the best in the country, it's probably second best. I think it's better than the Big Ten. I know that's not going to be taken lightly with my listeners here in the Big Ten. Let me ask
what?
you this.
The Big Ten is the best league in college basketball. Hold your tongue. Right. I'm a Big Ten fan as well.
If you want 55 points, yeah.
Hey, Nebraska broke 100 twice last year and did it once in the league. So whatever.
Let me throw this question out. I didn't send it to you guys ahead of time, so I'll put you on the spot here. From these Southern conferences, let's take out the SEC because the SEC is must-watch basketball. Jay, which team that we talked about tonight would you want to tell our listeners you've got to find on television or on streaming and watch from one of these smaller conferences? Which one team do you really think people ought to watch from the 8 conferences, smaller conferences that we talked about tonight?
That's a good question. I would say, if anything, you would want to watch a team from the Atlantic Sun. You would want to watch Florida Gulf Coast or even Lipscomb or even Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville, they've got Ohio State big man. He's a transfer from Ohio State, big man David Bell. He'll be eligible this year. He should make an impact with their freshman guard JD Note this year. So I mean, if there's any like conference you really want to keep an eye on, it's the Atlantic Sun.
Very good, Bryan. Same question to you. What team, maybe, or conference should our fans check out on their television or on streaming services from these small conferences?
It kind of depends on what you're looking for. Like if you want fast paced and teams that are just going to like make you laugh at how fast they go, then you should watch the MEAC and try to catch a Savannah State game, because you will literally be in awe at how fast they go and just how much like disregard they have for even playing in the post at all, or taking a shot that's not a 3-pointer. They don't ever get fouled either because they don't ever get to the line. But I really like the Southern Conference. You have Wofford, you have UNC Greensboro, East Tennessee State, and just various other really good teams that are built solidly. And the Fun Belt is always good for TV because there's always something crazy happening in the Fun Belt. Whether it's Ron Hunter tearing his Achilles, falling off a chair, or, just teams that have no business winning a game, right. DeMarcus Simon's going off for 50. I mean, the Fun Belt's the best. So
there's a lot of good basketball out across the country, and there's a lot of good basketball in the southern part of our country. Jerran, last comments, share with people again where we can find your work, and I'm excited more about the season start.
Again, you can find me. I'm a write on bustingbrackets.com and hoopshabit.com, or you can find me on Twitter at HereGoJ again. Good luck with that, because if anything, I will troll you. And we've got a week until college basketball, so I'm pretty satisfied. I've been watching League Pass, keeping up with that. So, I mean, I can't wait. Go Hokies.
Jay brings heat on Twitter, man. Like he brings pretty good heat on Twitter. So
I like discussion.
Follow him right after the show. But, hey, it's been nice meeting you through the Twitter machine or the computer. I appreciate your takes on basketball. Look forward to having you on the show again as the season gets going. And Delphi Bracketology needs some insight on how to seed some of these teams. But it's been an honor and a privilege to have you on the show. Good luck with all of the things that you do and the teams that you follow. Bryan, share with our listeners where they can find your work.
So as always, you can find me at bustingbrackets.com. I cover really all of college basketball. I'm also on Twitter at 3colorbeard. Now that I do also write for the Red Sox and RedSoxLife.com. But now that baseball is over and my team won the World Series, I can now safely focus on college basketball. So I'm ready for the seasons to start in a month or a week. Sorry. And I am a Nebraska basketball fan, so hold your applause later. But when they win a tournament game this year, for the first time ever, you can say you heard it here first from me. But other than that, I'm just looking forward to this season. It's going to be a fun time. There should be a lot of really good basketball play. There's a lot of really good mid-majors that nobody knows about. Like I said, so should be fun. And there are going to be Conference USA is going to have they're going to have some teams in Division I that are going to get beat by them in the whole conference.
There you go. 1 week from tomorrow, we're recording this on Monday. It's probably going to be broadcast out or published out on Tuesday. So in 1 week, the college basketball season starts. So this will do it for this edition of Sports Talk with Tonsoni. Follow us on Twitter at SportsTons and at Delphi Brackets for bracket information. Our preseason bracket will be out within the next week from our high school bracket group. For Jerran Anderson, Bryan Mauro, I am Bryan Tonsoni. Until next week, happy hoops watching.